And now I'd like to introduce our featured presenter today. He is Joel West, Senior Technical Instructor for VMware Education. Joel has 19 years of experience in routing, switching, and data center. He began working for VMware Technologies in 2005 and holds all 5 VMware Certified Professional certifications, as well as implementation expert certifications in NSX and EUC. We are excited to have him join us today to present on digital transformation in the age of a mobile workforce. Joel, you now have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. I'd also like to add my thanks to everyone for attending today. And we're going to spend a few minutes talking about what the digital workspace is and the journey that we've been on for the past several years, with end users transforming to this new way of working. And again, over the past decades, we've had quite a transition in IT in the past 4 or 5 years. We've had some particular changes with end user access to what they need to do their job and how they work remotely. So that's really what the digital workspace is. And we want to take a few minutes first to really define that. So after we define what the digital workspace is, then we'll talk specifically about Workspace ONE. And this is how we implement the digital workspace here at VMware. I'll do 3 platform demos. And this is really the best way for you to get an idea and a feel for what we're talking about. So some of you may be doing some of this already in your workplace, but we want to talk about some of the challenges and the way that we can answer those challenges with Workspace ONE. Again, in all the years that I've been working in IT, it's the most comprehensive solution I've ever dealt with. So we've been able to really address pretty much any use case that we've been presented by our customers. We have 2 new training classes that focus on this technology, and I'll outline what those are about. And then we have a new certification. So VMware previously, until April the 27th, had 4 VCPs, or VMware Certified Professionals. We have a 5th one now, and I'll talk to you about what that is toward the end of the presentation. All right, defining the digital workspace. So first of all, let's talk about what has happened in transition with end users over the past several years. More and more users work remotely. So that's just a fact. Less people come into the office, whether it's a decision made by the corporation to cut down on resources, or whether the fact that we are trying to adjust to lifestyle trends, or just the fact that we have a significant part of our workforce that might be mobile. Any one of those reasons has led to why we have more and more users working remotely. So let's talk about what challenge that proposes. In the past, if I had a laptop or a desktop that my company owned and something went wrong with it, we'd go into IT, and IT would perform whatever the necessary fix was on that device. Also, resources were accessed internally, meaning that you came into the office and you access those resources while you're in the office, and we didn't access anything once we left the office. Well, today's behavior, we work all the time, and we need access to resources at all sorts of times and from all sorts of places. So those transitions that we've been through in the last several years have really led to some serious security issues, and we needed some ways to address that. So the first thing we want to do is to try to simplify application access and management. So let's discuss what this is. Because we need more and more tools to do our job today, it seems, right? You just don't use one tool. You might have 5, 6, 20 different platforms. If I didn't have a single way for end users to get access to those resources, they might have 17 different links that I would provide them and 17 different authentication credentials. Well, that just leads to end user confusion and frustration, and a constant resetting of passwords or tickets that are put in for your help desk team. So it's really not efficient, and it's not secure. So Workspace ONE provides a single portal that the users access all the resources that they need. And access to that and all the subsequent applications that they access, or resources that they access to do their job, is controlled by a single login. Now that can vary quite a bit, but in most cases, it's their domain credentials. We also want to unify endpoint management. Let's discuss this. What's brought about the whole management of mobile devices was what I spoke about earlier. If people are working remotely, they have enterprise content on those mobile devices, and those mobile devices could be easily compromised or stolen. If they were not managed at all, someone could steal the device and access sensitive corporate content or contacts, or whatever the case might be. So when we manage devices, that gives us the capability of sending a remote wipe to those devices. And it's not what you might think. We're not doing a device reset. What we're simply doing is removing the enterprise content. So this works for both sorts of device ownership types. So think about the way that you might have a device given to you. Your company might buy the device, so that's what we call corporate owned. But many times we allow end users to access corporate resources by using their own device. So that is another popular acronym that you might be familiar with, BYOD, or bring your own device. So in either case, I want the capability of managing that content. So we have another acronym for that. We call it data loss prevention. And that's the whole point of managing mobile devices. So we've been doing that for years. We have those devices enrolled and managed. We can put certain profiles against them to prevent application installation that have vulnerabilities. We can provide nice conveniences. I can push down your email configuration or the Wi-Fi settings for all the offices. So it again lends to a lot of productivity to the end user. But the main capability that we want to be able to identify is the fact of doing an enterprise wipe. And that's a term we have to educate end users about, because when they hear wipe, they're thinking, you're going to factory reset my device, and if it's my own device, I'm going to lose all my personal settings. And that's not the case. We're simply removing the enterprise content that was managed under your enrollment. And that also leads to another misconception. Well, if my device is managed, you're looking at my text and my pictures, you're listening to my phone calls. And once again, that's not what this is about at all. It's not about privacy invasion. In fact, we can't even do those kinds of things. We simply want the capabilities of removing the enterprise content should we have a compromise. But as a follow-on to the first point I made, it's to simplify identity integration. So this goes back to the fact that many companies have several different solutions that they've put in place over the years, and those solutions were not coordinated. What this means is the authentication credentials might not come from one source, say Active Directory, for example. So if you have multiple identity sources or multiple solutions, Workspace ONE can integrate all of those seamlessly. Another thing is multi-factor authentication. All right, let's discuss that mobile solution. And I'm going to demo these things for you here so that we get a better understanding of that. One way that we can always access the Workspace ONE portal, which gives our users access to the tools that they need to do their job, is from a browser on any device. So the device doesn't have to have any special configuration. It doesn't have to be managed. And they could just open up a browser, enter the portal URL, and put in their credentials. So because that is only a single point of authentication, we usually encourage our customers to use two-factor authentication. In fact, we even give you a solution. We have a solution called VMware Verify that's already built into the product. Then third thing is conditional access. What this means is if you want to restrict what resources end users get access to, whether they're accessing from a mobile device, from a Mac, from a PC, or even from a particular location, you have the capability of doing that. But really what we want to accomplish is to handle the challenge that we've been given in today's end user environment. We want to be able to access any application from any device, including things such as desktop resources. So if you're familiar with desktop resources like Citrix or Horizon, if those are already pre-configured solutions, we can seamlessly integrate those into Workspace ONE as well. So Workspace ONE is a two-component solution. So this is what we use at VMware to answer all of the challenges that we're given in today's end user computing environment. So the unified endpoint management component is the one that manages all of our devices. The identity and access management component is what handles all of the integration of those different identity source solutions. So if you're just not a single solution, so all of your users are based in Active Directory and that's the only thing you have, right? That's a pretty rare use case in the real world. Usually there are multiple solutions that you have bought and put in place over the years, and we have a very easy way to integrate all of those in Workspace ONE. So this is just a little more detail about what those two solutions provide. So the identity and access management is what provides this portal. So that's what they log into. It also contains all of the administration functions, and it contains the tools to do the integrations of the more high-end resources like the Horizon desktops or applications, Citrix resources, and then it's also where you can configure a variety of different authentication methods. So anywhere from just a simple browser all the way up to a fully managed device that does what we call mobile single sign-on. What that is that's a very highly secured session. It's like a VPN, but it doesn't require a VPN. It uses some other processes behind the scenes. Most of our banking and other financial institutions, tax preparation companies, government, they all do that, what we call that mobile SSO from a highly secured endpoint. And we'll talk a little bit more about what some of these different choices are. But the unified endpoint, anything I want to push down to the device. So I wanted to push a Wi-Fi profile down to you for convenience so that you can log on easily. I want to push down your email configuration. Maybe I want to push down some content. So we could push, say, some PDFs, for example, that might be manuals or price lists or things that you can use in sales and marketing. We can push all those documents down and manage those as well. All right, and then the applications that we have access to is essentially any application that you could think of. So that's one thing to also start thinking about with some of these challenges where it's pretty it's a long list of requirements. So if you have a mobile device, you're familiar with what a mobile app is. You go to the appropriate store, right? The Play Store, the App Store, the Windows Store, and you download the application and it runs locally on your mobile device. But there's also web-based apps. So these are applications that don't require being downloaded, but they actually run as a hosted service. Then the third kind of access application would be the one that requires a resource integration with some third party. This is the way the virtual desktops, Horizon and Citrix, that's the way they work. Workspace ONE can deal with all of those challenges very easily. All right, so I'm going to do some demos in just a minute, but this is what we're really talking about. We're going to log into a single portal, and that can be an app on a mobile device, or it can be a browser from a laptop. And the credentials that I provide that authenticate me to the portal are used to access all the applications that have been entitled to me. So as an end user, I do not have to remember multiple sets of credentials. I remember my primary set of credentials, which is usually my domain credentials, and that's all I need. All right, let's define one other thing that is a very hot topic today in end user computing and in the digital workspace. And that's how do we deal with employee-owned devices? So that would be the devices that fall into bring your own device. So these three states are the three states that could exist in the digital workspace today. We could have completely open access. What we mean by that is I open up a browser from any device and I log into the portal. So the device is not managed in any way. It could be a personal device. It could be somebody else's device. What drives the authentication are my credentials and the two-factor authentication component if I have that configured. So if you're not familiar with VMware Verify, you might be familiar with one of our partners, which is RSA. So that's another two-factor authentication method. And that's what we're talking about, is providing two sets of credentials, and it just increases the level of security. Workspace ONE registered. This is usually the state that our employee-owned devices are in. So this is BYO. In this case, we know about the endpoint, which means it's a registered known point, and I'm only controlling the applications that I give to you. So don't have the capabilities of doing an enterprise wipe. I cannot push profiles down to you, but the endpoint is known, and I can manage the applications that appear in the portal when you log on from this device. The final state is managed. In this case, we're fully managed, which means I can control the device. So an end user can make the decision if they want to be registered or managed. And I'll show you how that works here in just a minute. All right, so let's do some demos. So the first demo we're going to do is a demonstration that I always do when I am presenting to usually like a help desk team. So this shows you a lot of the power behind what happens when we have Workspace ONE. So what I'm going to do is start off by demonstrating a login to the portal with a browser. So this is our live example here at VMware, and I'm just going to sign into the portal, and I don't even have to put any credentials in. The reason is that I logged into my laptop with my domain credentials, and my domain credentials are the same ones that are used for the Workspace ONE access. So again, it's the same set of credentials. I'm not even asked for any further credentials. You have a catalog view and a bookmarks view. The catalog is all of the applications. Here at VMware, we're served up about 160 applications. But as you guys could see from the bookmarks, I only use a handful of those on a day-to-day basis. So I'll speed a little bit of this up so you guys can see it. So when I go to bookmarks, right, I only have a handful of applications there because that's the ones that I use. So I'm going to click on one of the applications, and this is the VMware Learning Zone. And you notice that I was not prompted for any additional credentials. So any application that has been entitled to me as a user will utilize my domain credentials as that login criteria. So I could click on any of the other applications here in the portal, and I'm not going to be prompted for any further credentials. And that's really what Workspace ONE is all about. It is a single portal with a single user access, and we have what we've called federated these applications. So there's some configuration steps that are highly secure that allow me to utilize a couple of different security protocols that, again, bring this highly secured method of access. Let me show you something really cool now. I'm going to use Office 365. So I'm going to log in from Office 365 from the browser. I could install the apps from here, or I can run the cloud-based versions. So again, this is one of these conditions that allows you to sort of address both. So I could click Excel, for example, run the cloud-based version of Excel, or I could download the applications if you gave users access to that and be able to run it locally. So I can run the cloud-based version, and you'll notice that even when I click on the cloud-based version, even though I opened up these documents from my locally installed version, it syncs across. So that's another really powerful feature, is that all the recent documents sync against what I've opened because it's tying Office 365 to me as a user. So not only does it sync across the, let me stop this 1 second while I talk about that. Not only does it sync across the cloud-based version of the apps and the local-based version of the apps, but I'm going to log in with my phone, and I'm going to access Office 365, and let's see what that looks like. Now, this is an iOS phone that I'm using as an example, so we can incorporate the biometrics that come in a platform. So here I'm using the fingerprint for iOS. And you got to get your finger on there just right. There we go. And so I'm going to click Office 365 now in the Workspace ONE app. And you're going to see something here that, again, that is really cool. So between my laptop and the browser and the Office 365 app on my phone, again, I have the capability of installing the applications or running the cloud-based versions. But take a look at this. The applications sync across the platforms. So this is what I refer to as unified access across all platforms. So usually at that point, the help desk is sold, because that is going to eliminate all of the irritating questions that they get from end users about, well, it looks different when I access it from this or that. It's all the same. And in fact, it syncs across all your devices. All right, so let's take a look now at a second demo. And the second demo is what happens if an end user wants to transition their device. So how does an end user go about getting their device enrolled? So the simulation here is that this is an end user's personal owned device. So I like to show this because BYOD is such a critical component and question in today's end user environment. So this is acting as a personally owned device. I'm going to download the Workspace ONE app from the App Store. And again, this is the same for iOS or Android or even Windows 10. And normally at this point, so let me mention something here. Normally at this point in a production environment, the user would enter their email address. We have a feature that's called auto discovery, but that requires that the email domain be set up. So because this is an example from one of our training labs, that's not feasible. We have about 600 students worldwide in Workspace ONE training. So I can't maintain 600 dummy email domains, right? It's just not feasible to do that. So one way you can do is just actually type the URL of the Workspace ONE portal. So when that gets created, you can type that URL in. Now at VMware, ours is very easy to remember. It's login.vmware.com. So many of our customers set up something like that. So in case the end users do need to enter it at some point, it's something that's really easy to remember. But in most cases, they can enter their email address here to get this started. The only reason I can't do it is just because this is a lab example. All right, so we're going to enter that URL. And once we enter that URL, I'm going to be asked for my credentials. In this case, my domain is corp.local. My username is jbauer, and I'm going to enter my password. So again, the end user knows their credential, and you notice it defaults to the domain that you've got this deployed in. So this is the very first time that we've accessed Workspace ONE. So what it's doing now is it's pulling the device ID so that we have the device as a known endpoint. All right, so here's the applications that I've been given or I've been entitled to. So I want to call your attention to what's next to the install. So again, this is a personally owned device. I have now registered it against Workspace ONE, but if I click on the VMware Boxer app, that's an email application, or if I clicked on VMware eStories, which is just a marketing application, if I clicked on either one of those, it would redirect me to the place to the App Store and download the application, and then the application would run. And I wouldn't be prompted for anything else because those are what we call open access applications. But if I clicked on either Inbox or Browser or Content Locker, those have a little star next to them. Those are what we call managed apps. So here's where the end user gets to choose. Do they want their device fully managed or not? If they want to be able to access the applications that I've classified as managed, then they will have to go through that process. So it puts the decision in the end user's hands. So in the early days of Digital Workspace, back before we had Workspace ONE and we used VMware AirWatch, there was only two states, enrolled or not enrolled. So you basically had to be managed or not managed. There was no middle ground. And we had a lot of end users that were very resistant to that with their personally owned devices. So this now gives them an intermediate state and puts the choice in their hands of how they want to access applications. If they want the convenience of accessing these applications from their personal device for convenience, then you got to go through the management process. So again, it puts it in their hands and takes that choice off of us and IT. All right, so the first application we'll access here is eStories, and it's going to prompt me to go to the App Store. And we're going to download that just like we would any other application. And so now that was an application that was provided to me in the list from Workspace ONE, but it is what we call an open access application, which means it doesn't require my device to be fully managed, only registered. All right, so let's go back to the Workspace ONE app and let's click on one of the managed apps. And let's see what happens. So in this case, we clicked on Content Locker, and this is going to invoke the transition from registered to managed. So what we've done here in this screen is we try to explain to the end user what we're doing. We want to be able to deal with corporate resources, secure access, synchronize all the apps and content, and really just enhance your experience. So what we're trying to do is alleviate those concerns that this is a privacy issue. It's not. It's just a content management issue. I want to be able to maintain control of my corporate-owned content and even provide you with conveniences, right? Your email application, Wi-Fi settings, so on. All right, so you're going to go through and accept the steps to follow this process. So it's going to apply what's called a workspace profile. And again, you have to allow these things because this is your personally owned device. So I'm asking you, is it okay to do this? So once again, this is the end user's choice. But this is going to give them very convenient access to all the corporate resources from their personally owned device. And all I'm asking them to do is allow me to wipe or remove the enterprise content that is sensitive content that is mine. I'm not touching your pictures. I'm not touching your email. I'm not dealing with anything with texts or phone calls. So this is live. So as you can see, that only takes just a second. So now once that got done, it prompted me for the installation of those applications. And you can also see that the star was removed from all of the other applications. So you only have to do this once, and once you're in the managed state, you have full access to all the applications that are in Workspace ONE. All right, I've got one other demo for you here, and this is showing access to a desktop resource. So I would say about half of our customers in Workspace ONE have been using virtual desktops. Now, let's give a quick example of why you would use a virtual desktop. Let's go to a tax preparation solution. So you're going to your tax preparer, and they're going to be entering all your sensitive information. So the machine that they're entering that information in doesn't actually reside in that office. It's running in a secure data center. The machine that they're accessing that from in the office, it could be an iPad, it could be a laptop, it doesn't really matter. We're going to open a browser to Workspace ONE, provide our credentials, and log into that desktop. So that endpoint that's in the office is just input-output, right? There's nothing on it. And so secure desktops and virtual desktops have been used in all sorts of security scenarios, and also it's a great convenience for things like education, because the creation of these virtual machines is all automated. So I need 500 desktops for a class next week. I can automatically do that. And then when I get done on Friday, I can just delete them as easily as I created them. So there's convenience reasons around virtual desktops, but most of the time it's security. Same thing with medical. If you've been to the doctor recently, pretty much every doctor, and even I've noticed dentists now, are putting in all of your records and everything from an iPad or from a computer that's in the office. Take a look at that computer next time you go in there. It's not really a full desktop or laptop, right? It's what we call a thin client. They're accessing a virtual desktop from that machine that is in the office. So it's the same thing with an iPad. There's nothing really on the iPad. They're accessing a virtual desktop from that endpoint. So let's do one more demo and let's take a look at how that works. Because again, I'm not asked for any other credentials. So in this case, I'm on a Windows 10 desktop, and I'm going to open up access to the portal. So we're going to open a browser. And I'm going to put in the URL. And of course, many times your IT department will just put this as a bookmark. So you can click on that, log in with your domain credentials. All right, click sign in. And now in my list of apps is a desktop icon. So what I'm going to do is click on that desktop icon. So you would click on that desktop icon exactly like you would any other application. But instead of the application opening up, it's going to automatically log you into that virtual desktop that's running somewhere in a secured data center. So again, this is real time. And you notice it takes just a second to log in. And this is even a lab environment, so we don't even have, a lot of high performance as we would in a full-blown data center. And you can see that took just a second. So when the user gets done, they can log out, and again, all your resources are secured. All right. All right, so let's talk about the new courses. So we've demoed all different sorts of ways of accessing Workspace ONE, but you could see how, again, this solves a lot of the challenges that we have today with end users. We very securely and very conveniently, with minimal amount of effort on their part, provide them the resources that they need. So the two new classes that we have. Our flagship course is VMware Workspace ONE Deploy and Manage. We're currently in version 9.4, but the product revs quite frequently, revs about every 3 months because of the new capabilities that we add. So we don't teach a specific version. We usually teach a life cycle because the features that change are just minimal. So you'll notice a lot of the products in VMware get labeled this way with a .x, and that's for that same reason. But this course teaches you everything. We start with the core infrastructure. What are all the pieces, parts that make up a Workspace ONE solution? How do you integrate all of those parts? How do you integrate something like Active Directory? How do you integrate a Horizon desktop environment that's already been pre-created? We go over all those things and show you how to do everything step by step. After we get that done, then we show you how to do lifecycle management of your endpoints. All right, and so again, by the end of the week, you've got the skill set to cover off deployment and administration of a Workspace ONE environment. And that course covers all the objectives of the new VCP certification. Now, as I had mentioned, prior to Workspace ONE, we had just the endpoint management part of the product. So until a couple of years ago, the two components that make up Workspace ONE were independent products here at VMware. So we had VMware AirWatch, which was endpoint management, and VMware Identity Manager, which was handling mobile single sign-on. But a few years back, the products were combined, and we're still continuing that evolution to seamlessly put those two components together. But because we still have so many customers that are on the AirWatch product and want to transition into Workspace ONE, they know everything there is to know about endpoint management. They've been doing endpoint management for 5 years, let's say. So the only thing we need to teach them is identity management and the Workspace ONE portal. So we have a 2-day class that focuses on that skill set. So that's for current AirWatch accredited students, and this gives you the skill set to finally transition yourself back into the digital workspace. There's one other course that I didn't list on here that will be coming live in August, and it is a 2-day Windows 10 course. So let me spend just a minute talking about that. We've mentioned managing the endpoints. So usually with iOS or Android, we're talking about managing the profile configurations like email, content, and secure locations. We do things like turn off the camera, or I give you a Wi-Fi profile or a VPN profile, things like that, or application assignment like we were demoing before, how those applications got assigned in the Workspace ONE portal. But over the last year, as we've been looking at managing desktops, both Mac and Windows 10, many of our customers have asked, I'm managing the Windows 10 endpoint from Workspace ONE. Why don't I just manage the entire life cycle and assign group policy to my Windows 10 desktops through Workspace ONE, also handle updates and patches through Workspace ONE, and also can I communicate with third-party integrations, let's say McAfee or a Symantec, to make sure that antivirus is running. So basically do what we call a health attestation. And so that's what we've been really working on here on the last 18 months, is providing those capabilities. And that's become so popular with so many of our customers, they're going to use Workspace ONE as a single point to not only present the digital workspace to their end users, but also manage their Windows 10 desktops. So because that has been such a large request, we're going to have a dedicated 2-day class on how to manage your Windows 10 desktops. Now in the 5-day class, we show you how to create a basic update profile and how to block someone from installing software And of course, we like to make things humorous. I always like to say, if you're not laughing, you're not learning. We block Xbox. So we teach you how to block somebody from installing a piece of software. But those are our 2 flagship courses. And I always like to spend a few minutes trying to help understand which course is right for me. If you've been administering AirWatch for 4 or 5 years, take the 2-day class. But if you're new to the digital workspace and you haven't really done a lot of extensive work in any of these platforms, you really need the 5-day class to get all the concepts and put everything together. And then we've got a new certification. So this new certification is the VMware Certified Professional Digital Workspace 2018. So the reason we put a date on it is that, again, because of the frequency of the product rev, we wanted to associate a life cycle to this. So this will be something that would be good for 2 years, let's say, as most certifications are, but it will indicate what your competency is at the product level. So this is more important for partners and our partners that do installs for customers and partner competency rather than just a regular customer. Regular customer, you know, you got VCP certification that helps with all of your different levels of discount and all of that. It's really for the partner community more so that we're concerned with to get competency on certain life cycles of the product. But again, it covers all of those things that we talked about in the 5-day course. So how to deploy everything, how to do some administration and some endpoint management. Now, if you're familiar with VMware certifications, it's a little different from the other VCPs. The other 4 VCPs require you to pass the foundations exam, which is a test of your basic skill set in vSphere. Because many of our customers that are in this field are not virtualization aware, or basically they have not been vSphere customers before. So they're new to vSphere. So we wanted to give them some time to ramp up on that skill set, and we wanted to make it fair. So we're not going to require them to have that level of competency at vSphere just yet. We want to maximize the skill set that they already have in end user computing and the digital workspace and mobile device management. And so we're going to waive that requirement for the time being. If you have a VCP already, you could take the exam as well, and it does renew your other VCP certifications. So again, it works pretty much like all the other certifications. The only strange thing here is that we don't require the foundations exam. All right, so let's wrap things up here. So what Workspace ONE does is to help simplify application access and management, lowering the cost of delivering all of these resources, because again, it's a single point of configuration and it's all controlled through the Workspace ONE portal. It unifies endpoint management. I have one pane of glass, if you will, where I can log in and manage my mobile devices and my desktops. It also modernizes Windows 10 management. Again, this is a choice. You can continue to manage your desktops the same way that you were doing. We also integrate with resources like SCCM, right, which is a management platform that has been used for Windows for quite some time. We can integrate those capabilities of SCCM into Workspace ONE. So we're very flexible with the customer's choices. But many of our customers are like, why am I running 2 or 3 ways of doing everything when I can do it all through Workspace ONE? So that's what we like to hear, and we're trying to help support them in doing that. But really the key thing is it puts an end to end user confusion and frustration. End users don't have multiple places that they have to go to access resources to do their job, and they don't have to have multiple sets of credentials. So one portal, one credential to access all the resources that they need on a day-to-day basis. All right, so we'll pause now for some questions. I think there's one more slide here, Kelly. I think that's some of your stuff. If you want to talk about that, I'll kind of leave that up so that everybody can see that.
Sure.
But we'll certainly pause now for some questions if anybody has any, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer as the best of my ability here in the next few minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Joel. While you guys are writing any of your questions down, just wanted to remind you all that we are doing New Horizons Cloud and Virtualization Month this month. So we've got 2 more webinars left. both next week. So hopefully you guys are able to attend those as well to see all of the offerings we have available. Also, thank you, Joel, for pointing out those courses as well. And I wanted to direct everyone to our website, newhorizons.com. We've got the outlines for those courses that you can find there, as well as if you contact your local center, they'll have all the information on scheduling and things like that. So want to point everyone there, and then remind everyone also that I'll be sending out the recording link later today for you to review today's session or pass on to any colleagues who were unable to join us. And Joel, it looks like we don't have any questions in the queue, so I think we could go ahead and wrap up today's presentation.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for presenting on behalf of New Horizons. We really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to do it.
All right. And thanks again, everyone, for joining today. I hope you all have a great day, and that will conclude today's session. Take care.
Thank you.